Hello everyone and welcome to the University of Arts London College of Fashion 2024 Fashion Business School Postgraduate podcast sessions. These series of panel discussions have been driven and influenced by the exciting and topical fashion industry related subjects researched and delivered by our postgraduate master's programme students for their final projects. They cover current and relevant themes shaping the wider fashion industry, such as sustainable practice, the use of AI and XR technologies, and also inclusivity. We hope that you enjoy these session discussions and thank you for listening.
Hello, so welcome to the LCF MA Showcase podcast series. So today we have the amazing Josefa and Jiazhen. So I'm gonna just have you two introduce yourself very quickly, which course you're from, and what your dissertation was about.
Hi, my name is Jiazhen, and my course is Fashion Marketing and Global Cultures. Sorry.
Well, your dissertation, what dissertation?
Yeah, my dissertation is the topic is to study the Chinese Gen Z sojourners who live in the UK or study in the UK, which also included tourists and their behavior in London luxury retail store, and like how London retail store can have their repeat purchase.
Great. Fabulous.
My name is Josefa. I did strategic fashion marketing for my master's, and my dissertation was about how acculturation impacts the purchasing behaviors from Latin American consumers in the UK.
Great, fabulous. So evidently, let's just maybe get the context out of the way, because this is actually a great time to record this, because they're all publishing results either last or this week.
It's coming.
I believe Hermes is coming Thursday. So LVMH had their results published last week. It was a mixed bag, let's just say. Obviously, the beauty sector is booming, as we were all expecting, but perhaps the leather goods earning specifically were not sort of meeting the targets, certainly not meeting the expectations, right? I mean, internal targets, I guess we'll never know. But I just wanted you guys to maybe have a quick, sort of round of opinion on what do these earning misses maybe indicate, considering that they have made these massive investments in the last few years, since COVID. Obviously, investments in, I would say, the last 6 months were not really taken into consideration, including the Olympics and all that. Just what do we think it's telling us?
I think it's very interesting to see how it's been shifting, because we've always seen LVMH having these amazing results year after year, especially after COVID, where everyone thought, oh, luxury is not a necessity, luxury is not something that everyone's going to buy, but it kept increasing. And it's very interesting, again, when you mention like all of these investments that they're doing. LVMH just signed a multi-year contract, again, with Formula One to be their sponsor, which is like one of the highest grossing sports in the world. So I think it's quite interesting to see how luxury nowadays is not just categorized in fashion, but it's steering towards like the more lifestyle, the more wellness situation. As you mentioned, beauty is growing. So maybe people are noting that long-term investments in fashion might be easier than just one-time purchases.
So interestingly, you've brought up kind of the angle of diversification, because that was my next question, was that do we really think this is a real crisis, given that obviously leather goods counted as a giant part of their general, I guess, profit. But also thinking about, all these investments with hospitality, with entertainment, with the sports world, as well as, in beauty. It's a kind of an ever-expanding arena. Do we think this is more indicating that perhaps leather goods is simply not as dominant of an area within their portfolio as before?
No, I don't think so, in my opinion. For example, I think LVMH have opening a lot of restaurants, like collaborated with LV or like other brands. They are expanding their business and like marketing strategy. And it doesn't mean that leather goods is not gonna be growing in its profit. It's just they are opening their opportunity to attract more customers in different angle.
Interesting. So basically, the diversification, even though, yes, sure, they're developing new categories, perhaps they're going into new arenas, but ultimately it serves more from a big picture point of view, still kind of raising awareness for the brands that are, I guess, predominantly leather goods.
I think as well with leather goods, it's what I've been seeing lately is that there's so much market, especially from smaller brands that do have a bit more diversification in style and design that doesn't, like the Bottega bag, I love that, but it's everywhere. And some points in luxury, do you want to be like everyone else, or do you also want that exclusivity? So I think it's also people, I'm working in a marketing agency for luxury travel, but you can see everyone's not wearing their Goyard, not wearing their Bottega. They're like, oh, I went to Greece and I found this really small artisan that did this bag. It's leather, 100% leather. It probably half the price, but it has that exclusivity point that maybe now these massive conglomerates don't have.
So that's a really good point when it comes to value proposition. So what do you think is, I guess, the new proposition for these type of brands, under these big groups? Because there's an increasing, I don't want to say homogenization, but kind of standardization of brand management, right? Everyone wants to pump up loads of SKUs. So when it comes to the angle, I mean, you use Bottega as an example. I think out of all the brands, Bottega is probably the one that fosters sort of these artisanal angles the most. So do you see that as maybe where consumer trends are shifting for the luxury consumers, is sort of this more artisanal, more sort of niche kind of craftsmanship?
Yeah, I definitely see that. I think it's like the concept of luxury being considered as something unique and something that not massively produced. Now luxury, in my opinion, does feel kind of like that. Like every single season, multiple SKUs, as you said, multiple styles of bag that we keep seeing over and over, and it loses that like tangible feeling in a way of like having something unique, because it keeps being repeated. Even if it's like in the high street, you can get the Bottega bag, quote unquote, from Zara, for example.
Yeah, what's that bag we keep seeing? That looks like a combo of the Jodie and the Hop. It was it was like this hybrid of Jodie and Hop.
But again, Hopdi. I think that a big part of it, or one of the reasons I personally really like the concept of luxury, is this not about money, but about like this feeling of having something so unique that you're probably a few of the people in the world that can have it. And I feel like now that everything's so global and massified, it's very hard to find those signature statement pieces that you can be like, oh, this is actually something that not a lot of people have. And it's not about money at this point, I think. It's about like being able to yourself be appreciative of something that is very, very interesting and something that is very, very unique.
I agree, but counterpoint. So why do you think brands like Miu Miu, who are doing so well at the moment, seem to be moving towards kind of pumping out these
trendy
style?
What do they call that range? But just kind of those straw bags with logos printed on them. And I know that the industry keeps saying, oh, we're entering this era where logos don't matter, but that's clearly still going strong. So which leads us to maybe the kind of next segment, which is about consumers of today. In terms of the general luxury slump, which we're probably going to be seeing quite a lot in numbers this week. Oof. So what, in general, do you think contributed to this kind of new consumer mindset, which, have, resulted in the slowing down of the whole sector in key markets like China?
I think, firstly, the brand value, like what Chinese consumers think. Also, like in terms of this demographic, I think they will do a lot of research on Red, it's called, or Little Red Book, whatever it's called. It's an app that people will share their thoughts and their purchase products for review or everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, they.
It's like the Yelp of
The
luxury.
Yelp of luxury.
They really look at it, and especially when you come up to visiting London luxury store, they will look at what's on sale or what's on trend, what's having offer. They'll look at the red and then go to the store.
Is there like influencers or opinion leaders in this app? Yeah,
so
that's very interesting.
It's a real and fake information on the red app.
So would you say that word of mouth is arguably the most effective, I guess, marketing at this given moment in China, rather than any image making?
But people are getting clever now.
Yeah.
So
There's a counterpoint for that. They're getting cleverer, or they're simply,
they getting
Thinking.
clever.
or getting the wrong information.
But marketing agencies also getting clever. So the consumers think if you have a lot of followers, the information might not be real.
Yeah.
But so then marketing agency will pay for non-famous people
That's so interesting. So
to post something.
it's the manufactured. It's a manufactured relatability.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you point that out, because I was reading this thing again, where it's like marketing agencies creating like fake Reddit accounts, so they can comment as real people and making relatable, like, oh, I went into this store and this consumer survey was incredible. And they try and lead you to buy by thinking, oh, this is another average person consumer. So it's very interesting what you say. Like, we are not trusting these high influencers that promote everything because we want authenticity. So I think it's very important authenticity in this point as well.
Great segue. On the topic of micro influencers, because I guess you can argue that we kind of live in the age of relatability a little bit. Think about all the big pop stars these days; they all have to be relatable. I guess I grew up in the age of sort of glam divas looking down at you. All the pictures you have to take from the floor, so because you were looking up to them, right? So. What does that say about maybe the younger generation of luxury consumers, especially given that Gen Zers are going to be gaining purchase power? I think a lot of people are predicting that they're going to be a major force, but how much of their purchase power is going to be reflected in the luxury sector, given that they have these really unique sets of values when it comes to purchasing things?
Well, I think Chinese Gen Z in typical or in broader sense. Gen Z as myself, I very value sustainability, and also the brand storytelling, of course, the authenticity of the brand, also how in the marketing angle, if a brand is promoting on its own, it's not a communication. I realize a lot of big brands now they're changing their strategy. They make the content is more approachable rather than high level, how to say, sophisticated. This is our new level.
Or aspirational, right? Yeah.
But now they change. They will say they will interact and play with the viewer and the consumers.
Play with the viewers.
It's interesting what you mentioned about sustainability as well, because I think that's always a hot topic when it comes to Gen Z. But how real is the sustainability claims? Because I see a lot of oh, we love sustainable fashion or whatever. But we see, my TikTok is full of Gen Z people promoting the dupes they got on Shein, they got on DHgate. So is that, do you think, something that's more facade out to put out there, or do you think there's an actual consumption consideration?
I got a very, very interesting brand. Even though they really like sustainability, they're very supportive, it doesn't mean it will change to the buying behavior. The concept is good, I like it, I will support, but it doesn't mean I will buy it.
Yeah, I also think the concept of sustainability in fashion, I guess in general, in the last decade or so, have been mostly focused. Well, well, for the most part, they've been focused very much on the supply chain, environmental impact. But I do think the conversation is slowly shifting towards consumer behavior. And, you know, what does, I guess, sustainable consumption really mean? You know, I guess there's an argument if you're buying higher quality or perceived to be higher quality items that are a bit more timeless, and you know, and so you buy less of them. You know, that's kind of, I guess, it's a very surface way of looking at what sustainable consumption is. How much do you think that message will translate to the way that Gen Zers, I guess, consume fashion, considering that on TikTok, I guess these days everyone is constantly posting haul videos. So you know, these are consumers who grew up in haul culture. So how can luxury brands really speak to that, given that they're not trying to sell you 40 garments at a time for the most part?
For the most part, yeah. I think it's interesting as well because I think Gen Z is like very constantly trying to be unique and separate themselves, especially in the way they dress.
Ooh, shots fired.
But in the way, I think also it ends up being like, I see some sustainable fashion patterns in a way, like buying thrifted or like upcycling, etc. But at the same time, the consumption amount, again, you're saying like they do these massive hauls. I'm not saying just Gen Z because I'm Gen Z as well. Just in general, like millennials as well. There's this pattern of like, yeah, I'm buying sustainable fashion or I'm thrifting or I'm just going to a charity shop. But if you're buying 50 garments, it's still like overconsumption. And not necessarily, as you mentioned, it's something that will last forever because you can still buy Shein and Zara in a charity shop.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
I got a point. So I think sustainability is a long-going topic, but it's not many people will actually get the basic principle of it. It's not to have good quality product or is not buying stuff. It's about know what you actually want.
Yeah, and prolonging the cycle.
Style,
yeah.
Know what you actually, your value, everything about yourself, then you can make the good choice rather than the superficial level of everything.
That is a very good point.
That's a really good point. Yeah, which is why I wanted to maybe ask you guys, what do we think in terms of whether it's innovation or whether it's you know, whether that's business model innovation, or do we see anything transformative coming up from these major conglomerates that could potentially foster this way of thinking for the consumers? Or, you know, if we were the executives, what do we think could potentially be ways in which we can foster that line of thinking for our consumers?
In the marketing point of view, I got an example. So before, there's a lot of bad example of their localized marketing strategy for Chinese audience, like Chinese New Year campaign or like Chinese makeup with offensive shape and eating spaghetti. I think it's BV. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but now they changed. They actually understand the audience and they interpret their value not in a very surface level. The new campaign, I think it's Prada or Valentino. They really go into China and learn of the local habit and their culture and produce something that's really resonates with local Chinese people, but not only the adding of single symbols or like patterns, like dragon or very stereotyped shape.
I think it's an interesting topic about like cultural sustainability as well, because in my master's I researched that as well, and it's just the fact that you can try and be sensible, but as long as your team or your head of department or your communications or whatever doesn't have that inclusivity, it's never going to be as trustworthy or trustful, because you can see, even in fashion now, like if you go see the board of directors, it's just straight white men in their 80s.
Yeah.
The note of that, leadership. Obviously this year we've seen kind of a wave of new leaderships, being implemented in these major luxury brands that include both kind of on the executive level, but also the creative level. So we've seen quite a bit of changes in the creative direction, sort of shifts, many people exiting, as well as some new ones being appointed. There are even some heavily rumored changes, slightly exciting changes if the rumors are true. But I wanted to ask you guys, how much does creative direction in these luxury brands truly have an effect on, I guess, their main consumer groups? And I want to maybe just ask you specifically about the casual luxury consumers, not the ones that are like you and I, who are kind of very much in the trenches.
In the fire zone. I think it's a very interesting point, because I was just reading this article about the newish Alessandro Michele for Valentino. And it talks about a lot, like everyone loves the Alessandro Michele aesthetic. And everyone kept saying, oh, he did Valentino in the Alessandro
Who's everyone?
Michele. Oh, on the internet. No shade. But
am I everyone? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
But the interesting thing, I think, is, again, for people who are not in the fashion industry or not like super into like the research and everything, it is very easy to get caught up on the creative director's aesthetic. And even if you go back and see some articles being like, oh, he references Caravani sometimes and this polka dot, whatever, it is very hard for the average consumer to know that. So I think that's why the creative director has become such an important figure, because people tend to follow more the creative director than the brand. And you can see it as well in, like, I'm going to put Michele again as an example, because you can see that all of the people he used to dress for Gucci are now moved to Valentino with him. So he drives his posse with him, if that makes sense. And it keeps happening again with like some creative directors like Daniel Lee in Burberry. You can still see his essence. But is it to Daniel Lee? Is it the same as he did in Bottega? Or is it what?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that to an extent. I just wanted to maybe offer a counterpoint. You know, sure, for brands like Bottega or even for Burberry, perhaps that it's easier to translate. But when we're talking about a house like Chanel. With some of the most stubborn customer bases who will buy Chanel regardless. If you and I are creative, even though I think I could do a pretty good job.
I trust you, and I trust you.
But do we really think the creative director, or a change of creative director will really matter for a house like Chanel? For example, how many people on the street will even really know that? Who's at the helm of Chanel? I'm convinced that if you go on the street and you ask a random person who's the creative director of Chanel, they tell you Coco Chanel. I do believe a big chunk of the general public think that Coco Chanel is alive. They probably don't know who Karl Lagerfeld is. They certainly wouldn't know who Virginie is. So I guess, do you think this this kind of maybe depends a bit more on the nature of the brand? And I guess that's the big question, isn't it? Who's going to take over at Chanel, and does that really matter?
I think it's a good point, because then we're comparing two brands that are very like, the consumer of Chanel, as you say, they're very like focused on the brand and what the brand means. So I think it would be really interested. I definitely agree with you. I don't think it would matter for the general audience who would take it forward. But I think it's as well interesting to see how this is affecting, again, being knowledgeable in the like internal aspects, how also the involvement of Chanel doesn't have a, how do you call it, it's not under a conglomerate, so I think they have more freedom with that. But it's important to see as well how much these conglomerates have an impact between who is who. So I think I'm very excited to see what Chanel is going to do.
I want to add one point. I really agree with your the Burberry's creative director change from Ricardo to Daniel Lee actually changed a lot in Chinese Gen Z perspective.
Interesting, because they've obviously bled very heavily in that market the past few years.
Because Burberry's most profitable area is Asia.
So what was it about Tishy's tenure that really, I guess, spoke to the Chinese customer base?
It makes the brand, it lost its advantage of the brand.
So you think the I guess the mind share versus the market share, I guess is what this is going to be my next question, but I'm going to do it early. So you actually think the market share or the mind share was lost during Tishi's tenure?
Yes.
Ah.
Because the logo, everything, the British heritage is hidden. It changed to a more cartoon and the logo.
Cartoon?
You know,
Ouch.
like the TB.
Yeah.
The logo is actually the same as Taobao, which is
Or tuberculosis.
and it's
I
like
see that
Tory
then.
Burch is.
Oh, no.
It's
Sorry, Tori.
It's what Chinese Gen Z will think of, because I asked many of my friends about this topic, and they say they are so happy that Daniel Lee is coming back. They bring the.
So
real
when is it going to
Burberry
reflect
back.
on their sales? Because
it's not showing.
I mean, that's where everyone's.
It takes time.
Okay, but you do see a positive response.
Yeah, especially this year's the winter 2024. I hope you guys to see the show.
Yeah,
I think it really gradually
I did see it. Yeah.
take the identity of Burberry back. It just needs a bit of balance. Later.
But this is the one where they had the Amy Winehouse soundtrack,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I love it.
Wow, Daniel, if you're listening to this,
Contact her.
good
she
things
knows
are
info.
coming. Maybe maybe don't sign the Joe Sandra contract yet.
Oh.
Just a rumor. Nobody knows.
But I think it's really interesting the point you mentioned as well, because like from the Latino perspective as well, the symbols of brands matter so much. So like even what you mentioned, like it brings that heritage and like traditional English look. I think that reflects a lot in Latino markets, because it's more about I don't know how it's in China specifically, but we don't get luxury that much. So when you see someone buying luxury, it's definitely, this is a generalization, please Latino community, don't be offended. You probably see something with a bigger logo, not so quiet luxury as they love to say these days, which I know Benji loves the term. Ironically.
Exactly. If no one gets this, I hate it. But
he does. But it's interesting to see as well. Like you would see coming something that toned down Burberry a lot with Ricardo, and now you see it coming back with these emblems and logos and like literal representations of that British culture. I think it would make sense for it to resonate with some markets that are very interested in having that symbol with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess, branding 101 is that you don't, strip something that has such, I guess, such level of I guess,
symbolism.
Yeah, or even just sentiment, because when you think about Burberry, you think about this country,
countryside,
right? Because it's not as if, there are many other things to associate the Czechs with. Not that it's a bad thing. So just another note on the kind of mind share versus market share. When the brand is obviously at a certain level, you might have, I guess, a really buzzy creative director at the helm of the brand, but then you probably will also have various other things happening at that brand, and which may or may not contribute to what the numbers say. What do we think about this kind of, I guess, mind share versus market share thing? Because obviously we're seeing this rising trend of, we're only seeing, I guess, Pharrell, at Vuitton, maybe I was before him, Virgil to a certain extent. But do we think this is the reason why a lot more brands, or especially brands up there, are considering, I guess, creative directors with maybe not so conventional of a design background? They're thinking of people who can really make spectacles out of things, who can really kind of bring another element to it.
I think it's quite interesting because, again, Pharrell, I think, is the perfect example. He has a very cohesive, visual world when it comes to his music, when it comes to his movies, when it comes to whatever he's doing. And I think there's a lot of distinction, I think, nowadays between a designer, someone who can actually craft something, versus this creative director, which is more homogenous, general concept.
Big picture, image makers.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to quote Kanye West because that sounds horrible. But when he does that,
okay, a broken clock is right twice a day.
But when he says like, I see Lady Gaga being the creative director of Polaroid. What the hell does Lady Gaga know about cameras? So it's like, I know, I hate to quote Kanye, but it's true. Like, do we put the power of a brand into someone that really knows about the industry in terms of making, or do we do this vision maker, this visual maker that can make the brand approachable in like a 360 level, not just in the like garment?
I guess that's always been expected of creative directors to a point. That's why, they don't call them head designers, they call them creative directors. But I guess, how much do we think, just kind of, I guess, tying back to Gen Z and the younger consumer base a little bit, because everything has to be entertainment these days. Everything has to have entertainment values. So do we see that becoming a thing in the next 5 to 10 years? Given that how much entertainment is needed for this generation, that we need, because there's a rumor that Jack Moose was interviewed for the Chanel job, and he's obviously a big entertainer in that sense. Yeah. So what do we think? Do we see more Pharrellification of the creative director realm in big brands?
I think yes. So I think Gen Z is expecting more creative in every sense, and
including entertainment.
Yes, and go back to the last topic. Sorry, I do think creative director need more than a designer. They are more broader mind. They need to get in touch of a lot of industry. It's not only fashion. Otherwise, the inspiration is linear. And also, like it need to entertain Gen Z is because they need to know their need. They need to know the consumer what they really want, and then based on that, and then to combine with their creative version of visual production. They cannot just think of themselves, because it's at the end of the day is they're serving the customer base. So understanding of the consumer need and their real, what inside their mind is really key to them, I think.
So let's end on that kind of cultural aspect, shall we? Because we did mention earlier that micro influencers are having a moment. Younger consumers especially, perhaps are really not looking into that aspirational aspect of luxury branding. So why is it that it seems like more celebrities than ever are being utilized as brand ambassadors? When you think about, obviously, Jacob Elordi's Bottega campaign, everyone seems to have something to say. I believe Paul Mescal is now the new
Gucci boy.
Yeah, he's the Gucci boy. He has been the Gucci boy, but he's also the face of Cartier now.
Oh, right.
And I guess Loewe has a different new it boy on their campaign
week.
every season. There's a new one with Richard Gatt. In fact, I saw him on the street the other day.
Ooh.
He's been working out, by the way. I'm sure his agent said, "Well, now you're a 3-time Emmy winner. Hit the gym." But yeah, so why do we think that is? Do we like, what does this I guess binary approach really tells us?
It's quite interesting, because I saw this. I was gonna say I read this article, but it was actually a TikTok. Of course it was. But about like how fashion is in fashion now. Like, fashion used to be very niche and people who really like fashion. It was not a big group of people. And I think in the past 10 years, maybe with social media or whatever it is, fashion seems to be in fashion. Everyone wants to be fashionable.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to like fashion. It's cool to be cool now.
Yeah, it's cool to be different and independent. So this like massification of being into fashion also translate into these creative directors becoming celebrities themselves, and they universally build around them, because like everyone again will know who it is, these newer creative directors.
So should we say this notion of seemingly rejecting kind of these macro influencers' influence, we're actually emphasizing the importance of influence.
Yeah.
I guess in a way that we don't even know it.
I think it's also like the type of influencer. Again, we talk about relatability, and I think what Loewe does really well, even if they have 100 and 1,000, influencers is they pick them at the right time and time place, and they know exactly what fits them for a brand.
It's all calculated. It's all timed. I mean, when Gucci got Paul Mescal.
Yeah, he was coming.
It was like they knew that like Gladiator was
Yeah.
gonna come. Same with Jacob Elordi at Bottega. I'm sure they know this is the perfect time for him to be in the
PR is
campaign
working.
because Frankenstein's coming in like 6 months. So this is all perfectly aligned. Nothing happens by chance. Everything's calculated.
But there's still those like relatable characters if you think about it. Like the girls, we love seeing Jacob Elordi with his big pocket with his book, and it's like,
why don't they put shoes on him ever?
I don't know. I don't want to ask that. Someone in that team has a little fetish.
Right.
Maybe.
Oh my god.
Hey, I didn't say it. So but I mean, just going back to what we said earlier, even celebrities are becoming more relatable. All the big stars they need to have some sort of relatable quality to them. So in a way, maybe that's what it is.
And maybe it's what you mentioned as well before, like before these divas of the 2000s were like untouchable, but now even I think the top of mind for me, and please no one hate me for this, but I really dislike Jennifer Lawrence's whole like I'm relatable thing. I eat pizza, but from there it went on. Like everyone's like that these days. It's like I go to Met Gala.
So you think Jennifer Lawrence was
not
the godmother of relatability?
No, but I think it definitely was like a change in between being like this massive celebrity and being inapproachable.
It's
and
just
now I just go to Met Gala and eat McDonald's after, and that's how I am.
It's just such an interesting contrast because in the 90s where it was the age of Janet Jackson and Mariah Carey, the coolest thing for celebrity to do at the time was to be the face of like Pepsi, or Levi's.
The most relatable.
Right.
Thing.
Now you have all these relatable celebrities and everyone's on, everyone's selling like 6,000 pound bags.
Nothing relatable about that.
All right. Thank you both. I thought this was a really interesting conversation. I had loads of fun. And thank you so much. And congratulations on completing your degrees. And hope that good things are all coming. Okay. Nonstop. All right. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.